Okey doke. She put it off for 220 on it.
And still lost.
See, I'm supposed to get it exact rated.
That means her
$1
agent,
million for something that ain't.
her agent might not be making good
Okay.
terms.
Welcome, everybody, to the work session, April 27th, 2021. We're going to prepare for our meeting next week. Mr. Bailey,
Yes,
will
sir.
be doing the invocation and the pledge for us.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we will approve the minutes. We'll review the agenda. Over the committee reports, Teacher of the Year. We'll actually be meeting on the, that morning on the 4th committee to prepare for that. Clean School, we'll be meeting on the 10th with everybody. That's going to be exciting. Dr. McMichael? Yes?
We had originally, when we talked about going into the schools, talked about meeting with teachers and principals as we would with a regular clean school meeting. Why are we just doing this with custodians?
Well, I think, in talking to Joe, I think there's going to be some principals, teachers still there. You know, we're going to try to see whoever we can. But Joe thought, and his team thought we get the most bang for our buck in terms of talking to the custodians and thanking them for cleaning the schools if we went later in the day. And I'm not sure, but there still might be some concern about us, you know, walking schools while the kids are there. And
It's just hard to get both, because most of the people work at night, the custodial staff, so.
I don't have a problem with going twice.
Okay.
My concern is I don't want one group to think, you know, because you know how it'll take 10 minutes for everybody to know that we were out there thanking custodians. And our teachers and administrators have been working 2 and 3 jobs to get what they've done this year, and we need to be out there thanking them, in my humble opinion.
yeah, I don't have a problem doing it another day.
We
And
could go with another
Doing-
day,
doing-
go earlier in the day.
yeah, I'm totally good with that.
They can't.
And Joe, I don't even know if you guys need to go with on that. I mean, we could probably set something like that up through Dr. McMichael.
I think they expect that we can go.
I just think we really need.
Two different agendas, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm good with that, Lynn. I think that's a good idea too.
I just think we need to be aware that, you know, we're not letting parents in the building right now. And if we as adults go in, some of them are going to want to know why they can't go in. So just be careful.
Well, we're actually there to represent those parents too. I know they haven't been in there, and I've talked with many of them that want to be. So I just think we need to be in person. We haven't seen our principals really. They haven't been able to come here unless it was a special occasion, and we haven't been in those schools in a year. We need to be in there thanking them.
We can set it up for kind of after the kids leave, so they won't be.
So that's
do it
better.
Maybe in a couple of weeks, or we get hopefully better.
Yeah, towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
That good? You feel good about that, Lynn? That's kind of what you're looking at?
Lynn?
Stevens?
I'm sorry.
You feel good about that?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Dr. McMichael, you're gonna have some recognitions?
We are, we're going to have a couple, and we're going to have some live bodies in the room.
Yay.
Kind of, won't be totally open to the public, but we're going to allow the folks that we're going to recognize to have a few folks come in with them, set them up socially distanced, and have you all for board meetings back up here. So looking forward to taking that next step in the back to the normalcy.
Sounds good. Looking forward to that. All right, Superintendent Department reports. Dr. Green.
Yes, sir. I have a communications report there for your review. I'd like to call attention to page 5 of that report, where we have our campaign report for our March virtual career fair. That's a perfect example of taking lemons and making lemonade. Our planning and personnel department and our communications department got together to figure out a way we could continue to have a career fair that we do in the spring of each year. And so they held that virtually. You'll see some of the posts that were sent out to make people aware of the opportunities that were available to them. You see some of the website metrics that are there. I just want to highlight that bottom number there. We had 214 meetings that were set up between potential candidates and school staff, and that resulted in 35 interviews as a result of that. So in spite of the obstacles that we faced throughout the year, we were able to pull that off, and I was really pleased with that, and just wanted to draw your attention to that particular campaign report. If anybody has any questions about anything else on the report, I'll try to answer.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jason Ayers, transportation update.
Is this the update or the meeting?
This is the update.
Okay, I had it upside down or something. Okay. This right here, we're wanting to look at a student registry system for our buses. You know, we got Synovia tablets on the buses and everything. Those things have just a multitude of features and stuff. Y'all knows is the way this county is growing and stuff, all the struggles we have keeping up with 14, 15,000 kids is, you know, an unspoken thing. What we can do, I spoke with the company, we can put this scanning system on the bus and it's just barcodes. It's not anything, you know, it's 1940s technology, so to speak. But there's also an app that the kids can put on their smartphone if they have a smartphone. But what this does, it gives us a live data for the children that are on our buses, when they get on, when they get off, and everything. So we're just building on, you know, the bear that you guys put on Synovia. That was fairly new when I came on board on that part. We can go to the next one. This is just, all this stuff is just more visual aids. If you guys got any questions, I kind of hit the ground running with a lot of it and everything. But what they'll do, the scanner, you can see right there, there's two different kinds. There's like the chip and the barcode. We're just going to use barcode. We're not getting into anything with chips or nothing like that. It's just as simple as it gets with a barcode, because you can make copies of barcodes and use those, you know, just universal type thing on that. And also, we did find out we have the technology in the district to make a bunch of the tabs that we would use very quickly. So all that's already in place if we need to utilize that. The scan reports and all that accurate manifest. One thing with, like, if you have a bus accident, state patrol, whoever shows up, you got to give them an accurate list of children that's on that bus. Well, this right here is live data. It doesn't get any more accurate than that. The other thing is, and this is going out there because I had experienced this in previous county, sometimes parents find out a bus had an accident. Well, if you don't have an accurate manifest, some of those parents show up to the emergency room and their child went on the bus. So you get really a lot of controls, a lot of integrity, you know, it just keeps it very accurate, you know, because we had parents show up to the emergency room, their children weren't on the bus. They heard a bunch, you see what I'm saying? You find out real quick what kind of protection this gives us as a district, you know, for liability. I know that's throwing on the negative, but it's the world we live in on some of that. But the biggest thing is parents, there's another aspect of this, which is the Here Comes the Bus app. Through that app, parents can get notifications when their child stands on that bus and when their child gets off the bus and where. So if you're a mother not at home, dad, whatever, you don't know if your child's going to get on the bus. Well, if they scan on, guess what? Those that notification to their phone that's in their hand and everything. You guys can see on the screen, that's what the barcode would look like. That stuff's just up there to kind of give you some ideas of kind of what the badges and things like that would look like. We can go on up to the next one. Again, like I said, I'm not really following with this. This was the presentation they gave me, so I just kind of throw some stuff together on the, you know, toward the end of it. This gives y'all kind of a visual though of how the scanner be situated on the bus. Again, it's just a little scanner. They just, you know, pass the little tab, the key tab they would have, or their phone, you know, with the barcode on it, you know, under that. The other thing I think about is field trips. You know, if you've been on field trips with children, man, it's just crazy with so many kids running around. You need to keep an accurate, you know, log of that and everything as well. So I just safety, just stream safety on, you know, all the aspects of it. The other thing that keeps jumping in my head is if you've ever received the phone call about a parent wanting to know where their child's at and they don't know if they got off the bus, they're not at home, and you don't have no way of telling them anything. You have to call the driver, you have to go out to the neighborhood, you've got all these things you're trying to do. What if the child scans on and off? Well, then you know they're not on the bus. Now, that's only goes back to the child actually scanned off. So you're still going to follow your protocols, but it gives you a lot more control, a lot more opportunity to be able to get an answer quicker to that parent that may be concerned with that. But of course, if the parent has the app on their phone, they know their kid. You see what I mean? It's just kind of circular logic. The thing just keeps on rolling. It just keeps rolling in there. Just a lot more safety the more you think about it. That right there, on that screen right there was just how the government, there you go. That right there is kind of what the roster would look like. It will show a manifest of who rode. It's kind of got an attendance roster out there on the end. If something happened on the bus, look with the contact tracing stuff we're doing, praying, we don't have to continue this life, but as long as we do, you've got an immediate roster right there. That way, you just snap your fingers, that roster's live. Anybody can access that has rights to get into that system. So just a huge thing on its own. There's just more of the visual stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Just questions driving me crazy. I noticed that we can determine how long this information stays on the system.
Mm-hmm.
So can we do that for a week, or does it clear out every day after the kids are all safely?
No, what we would do, we would keep a good log of it. I hadn't really discussed that part of it. It's their servers, it's like anything else, has just a large amount of capacity on it. I'm assuming we could keep it up for a year if we wanted to. It's going to be a lot like Versatrans, you can roll year after year after year. I'm assuming this would be the same thing, but I would find out for sure before I'd say quote me on that. But like with everything else, there's just a lot of opportunity to save, the large piece of information if we need to.
Right. Well, I was just thinking in case of an accident and we needed the information about those children a month later or whatever. So
right.
We do have the information to store, the ability to store that, right?
Yes. Well, actually, you can turn it into a file and just put it right on your desktop. Memory stick is flexible like with anything else.
Okay.
Jason, I think this is awesome. What concerns do you have about the bus drivers being, kind of managing the process?
Nothing. It's just going to be a matter of getting the children in a routine when they get up. Just that's it right there. At the end of the day, there's your Achilles heel, getting the children into a new routine. So we're planning on launching this out next school year. Getting the scanners on. That's why we wanted to bring this out now. The cost of it's around $23,000 to add that for the year. That's just minimal for the results we'll get, for the abilities we get out of that system. But at the end of the day, she's teaching the kids to do that routine, when they get on and off. Now, the other thing is, what if a child loses their key tag or whatever it is we give them? We can print off a bunch of those. They can have them in order like a big ring, and they can give the kid one. That's the beauty of barcodes. You can just scan it, go on a good scanner, and you still got it. You can make as many of them as you want. But that goes back to kids can get on the wrong bus and all this. But I think it's the next screen on up. There's actually a point. Let's see. There was some that shows what it would register if it's an unauthorized rider. What it does, it flags it on the screen. If the kid's suspended, if the kid's not on that roster, then guess what? Even if that's a sub, my mind goes to sub drivers. They have no idea who those kids are and who should be on what bus. Well, there you go, right there. Some of that. That's what your screen looks like when it shows. Like if something comes up, it'll flag it. So even a sub would know, hey, look, I need to ask some questions right now. There goes back to the safety, getting the children where they're supposed to be to an accurate drop-off location, pick-up location and everything. So then they can, the driver or the sub or whoever has to go in and prompt them to clear them the ride. So the questions get asked, get answered, whatever they have to do to research, whatever answers they need. So it keeps children from bus hopping, getting off at the wrong stop. If they get to a stop that's not their authorized stop, well, guess what? If they scan off, it flags it then. They're like, whoa, where are you going? This is not your stop. So there's all these different controls on that. Now, obviously, it'd be different on a field trip bus or, if they're going home with a friend or whatever, and they've got a verified note or something like that. So there'll be a little bit to it that we'll still have to regulate just out of good sense, to make sure we're doing our part. But this takes a whole lot of the legwork, out of tracking, keeping up with the kids, especially for the parents' sake, giving the parents immediate information that they can do from their own phone and know where their child's at and when. It doesn't get any better.
Parents
It
are gonna love
doesn't get any better.
Parents are gonna love it.
They're gonna love
Yes,
it. Yeah.
yes. The other one, now that here comes the bus, the other part with it, this is the one that lets them know what time the bus is going to get to their house. Now, they can't track all the routes. They don't get that information. It pins their map. There you go, right there. It pins their, back, there you go. It pins that on the map, and then it shows where the bus is in relation to that. Now, what you're seeing on that circle, a parent can do this. They can set up a notification fence, and if that bus is in 2 minutes, well, on a 20-degree morning or a rainy morning, they get the notification. The child's not standing out there for 45 minutes, an hour. If the bus is late, or if we've got a sub, y'all know subs, they're just, they're out there dark 30 in the morning, never been on that road before. So they get to sit in the house until they figure out, hey, look, we might need to call transportation, but that lets them know, within the notification goes off, hey, the bus has been 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the house, they know to get ready to get out to the road. So that was that's a beautiful thing right there that parents would love to have in their hands. So it's just good. To me, it's a win-win for everybody. I can't think of a downside to it, just short of getting everybody in a routine, on the whole thing.
Kids are easy to learn stuff like that. They have fun.
I
They'll
think
love to
if kids
scan
make a
stuff.
game out of it, they'd be, I guess the older kids are probably gonna have, getting them in a routine. But those with the smartphone, they can put the app on their phone, You
They
know,
all got
scan,
home.
yeah, scan in with that. If they're not, we just attach something to their book bag, you know, something real simple, just keep plenty of them, you know, extras on the bus, and deal with that. So, it's a pretty good setup.
Have you thought of the consequence after they get used to it? And I'm thinking of this mainly probably for the older kids. Once they get used to it, if they decide they want to get off somewhere and they don't have a note and they just don't scan.
Well,
somebody
and
will flag them.
that's just one of those, we develop our procedures, like discipline procedures and all that. That's obviously safety. Kids will do that. They'll get on the bus when they're not supposed to, or try to ride and get off where they're not supposed to. We'll just, you know, I guess it goes back to our discipline procedures and how we would approach that depending on the situation, you know, the child and all that. That's just something we just have to implement in our progressive discipline policy. That's the way I see that part of it. You know, with their safety, you know, do what we've got to do. We can't control everything, but this gives us a pretty good bite out of it.
Yeah, because any high schooler can write a letter and get off the bus anywhere they want. So that makes it to where that's not possible to do that. And then also with the school time changes, you know, a lot of now high schoolers are going to school before their siblings versus the way it used to be. So this gives those parents that little extra bit of security if they're having to leave their fifth grader at home to get on the bus by themselves and whatever.
It's also good for administrators because they can look it up if somebody calls and says, you know, Susie on the bus.
Right.
In the past, we would have to try to call the bus shop, and it might be busy, it may not be.
That's right.
And then they'd have to call the bus, and so, you know, you're waiting 10 minutes.
That's right.
2 minutes.
Yeah, it speeds up a lot of it. It speeds up a lot of it. It kind of puts the same answer in everybody's hand if they need it, you know, for the most part. And then if we have a situation where there's, you know, a custody issue or something, we can totally, you know, we can lock out that user, and that one user can share it with the older siblings and stuff if they're helping. But we can lock a user out until we get better controls over the, you know, just find out more, get documentation, whatever's needed to get that back.
What I was the most nervous about was field trips, because it's one thing if you leave a kid at school or you leave them at home, but
If you leave them at the zoo.
Yeah, that,
And so they can check that roster, you know, I can remember doing it myself. And, all right, Johnny, you know, going through the whole checklist, and with that, you just pull it up and say, everybody needs to scan in, where's so?
That's right.
well, that also I could see, if you check that and make sure that everybody's checked out, that would eliminate them leaving a kid on the
Somebody
bus
sleeping in the
too.
back seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you can just keep your mind, I just kept thinking about all the things that would help, you know, despite some of the Achilles heels we may end up with getting out of routines and stuff. But for the most part, it's a wonderful thing, and as cheap as it is considering, it's a wonderful add-on to the system we have. Just going, especially with the growth we're seeing and going to see, you know, all that's coming down. We've got to get grip on some of this stuff to where we can just be more efficient with our data and stuff. So,
Great job. Thank you.
any questions? Okay. All right. Thank y'all.
Appreciate it.
Chris, I would think this would help you with determining the number of buses that we need too, right? Just because you'll have a log of how many students are actually riding the bus.
You know, we have the ones that we.
Yeah, and that's always
signed up for the
tricky.
bus, but-
Yeah, sure.
Because we may have, if you wanted to determine, say, if we do 80% ridership, 75, that's about typical of a school district. If somebody's got 80 kids, 70, 80 kids on their roster and only hauling 20,
Right.
well, we know exactly where we need to make route adjustments too. So it keeps us in a tighter pattern too with our routing and stuff. So, yeah, you keep talking, it just keeps going. And you're like, wow, we can do this and that. So
Yeah.
it's a great thing.
Awesome. Dr. Matt, anything for us?
The enrollment report is posted for your review.
Okey-doke. Ms. Houston?
All right, we have our normal invoices over between $10,000 and $24,999. The first one is N2Y Inc. It's paid for out of IDEA, which is our special ed federal funds, $14,087.28. And this is a district-wide licenses for the unique learning system. And it's a renewal. We have 45 drives manufacturer paid out of general funds, $23,662 for 2 storage units for the data center. And that's here at the PDC. At Tech Optics, out of the general funds, we paid $24,727.10 for security camera licenses. And these were district-wide. Williams Electronics general funds, $24,882, 58 hard disk drives for data storage here at the PDC. Aikens Ford, we paid $23,500 for a 2018 Ford Escape for the maintenance department. Questions on those? The next if you just scroll on up, this is just a recap of the board-approved $200,000 technology purchases. And we bought 349 Chromebooks. Yep, 349 Chromebooks for $161,823. So there's $38,177 left of that budget, or that amount. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe?
Good evening. Just to give you an update on the West Side Middle School project. Really getting things buttoned up on the inside, and we expect to have final cleaning and punch list work beginning next month. A lot of work outside will take place over the next 30 days as well, getting the topsoil respread, and grass and irrigation in place. I'd like to point out in these next couple of pictures, you see the brown paper on the floor. There's a couple of pictures where you can see the floor, but it's not long after the floor goes down and that brown paper is on top of it. And I know that's a little thing, but it's the kind of detail that you really appreciate. You know, they're covering that up and protecting it because there's still trades going up and down the halls and carrying tools around. And Charles Black does a great job just keeping things protected and cleaned up out there. Coming along
Who
very.
picked out that tile, Joe? Did you
Excuse
do
me?
that? Who picked out that tile, blue and white tile? Did you do that?
No, ma'am, we let the architects do that.
Good job, I like it.
Yeah,
That's good.
you don't want Kendall and I picking colors.
I think I'd like to see it personally.
And unless there's any questions, that's all we have on our report.
It's really looking
Looks
good.
good.
Looking good.
Out by there
Looks
the
really
other day.
good.
It is
Thanks.
sharp.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Moulton?
Ask Jenny Persinger to present first.
Thank you. Good evening. So, as you know, we are always in the business of reaching children where they are, and no matter what is impacting them, and making sure that they're getting what they need. But this year has made that a little more interesting, as you all know. So just to back up a little bit, this is some research from a year ago. So when this time a year ago, if you think about all schools across the country had all of their students at home, and NWEA, who happens to be the parent company that produces MAP Growth that we use, did some research, and they were actually looking at their past data of what happens between spring and fall administrations of MAP. So obviously, achievement would slow down. Students are not generally in school in the summer, so they're not achieving as fast as they would be otherwise. And that tends to be a little steeper in math than it would in reading. And if you think about public libraries have summer reading programs, even as a parent, it's a lot easier to say, here, read a book, than it is to sit down and try to do some math with them. So obviously, they can keep their reading skills up a little more than they can their math skills. And that was just typical of summer that they had seen in the past. And then NWEA tried to use that data to predict what might happen and what we might see in the fall, because at that point, we were assuming everybody was going to be back in a school building in the fall. We use that data as teaching and learning department and as a school district to kind of plan what this school year would look like. So then as Suzanne, if you'll go to the next one for me, please. Thank you. Our fall administration of MAP growth was the first opportunity that schools had to measure student achievement after those school closures. But for many schools in the state of Georgia and across the country, they still were not in school buildings. And if you'll remember, we actually started the school year at home or then in a hybrid situation. So we administered some of our MAP growth tests in a remote situation. We talked about having students at home, trying to take that through a Google Meet or a Microsoft Teams platform, Zoom type platform. But in November, NWEA then kind of released their findings again of what they saw nationwide with that first MAP administration. And it actually was not as steep a decline as they had predicted nationwide, which was good to know. That shows that what our teachers were doing, even with the obstacles thrown at them and trying to quickly switch to this remote learning. I think schools did a great job in the situations we were given to try to reach students. But again, like we said, achievement was still a little lower in math than it was in reading. And then one thing nationwide that was noticed is some changes in demographics. And basically what they were saying is they didn't have as many data points across the country as they had previously seen. And part of that would be, I'm sure there were schools that chose not to give it remotely, but we also know that there were some families that in the fall, we didn't have touch on. We weren't sure where they were, and we've been working, as we've talked about in past meetings, to get those children back in school. But despite all that, let's talk about what we actually saw. So this shows Barrow County's spring MAP data. So we just took the spring administration right before spring break. So these are percentile rankings. So that would mean 50 would be average. But keep in mind, that was average set before a pandemic. So it's not average for what the country saw in the spring, it's average of what they would have expected to see in spring of 2020 had we not shut down. Does that make sense? So I'm actually very proud to see how close we are to that 50% mark, considering all that we went through in anything but typical year. And we're almost back up to that 50th percentile across the board. Now you can see, obviously, reading is the blue line. It's a little higher than math, as was predicted, and that's what we're working on. We got to have the data to know where to move forward. And then this is actually fall to spring growth. What we're most interested in looking at is having students grow and get closer to show more achievement. One thing to notice is you see some of those lower grades had less growth. If you will recall, we talked about like first grade, for example, in the fall, this was their first experience with MAP, and most of them were at home. Okay. And we talked about how that might have gone at home for young learners and parents that don't like to see those young learners struggle. So as I have talked to schools throughout the year, they felt that the first grade data was a little inflated in the fall, maybe. It wasn't quite measuring what a first grader could do. And so now that's being reflected as it's evened out. I know Mr. Bailey specifically asked, how will we deal with that? And we said it'll even out as we get them back in school and we actually get some true data points. So based on what we're looking at, I think that's why the growth in those lower grades might not have been as high, because now it's showing what those students can actually do. And then there are two slides that show MAP has some great correlation studies that show how our students are predicted to do on the Milestones test. So remember, spring Milestones is still happening. We actually started yesterday in our school system. Keep in mind, second graders don't test in end of grade Milestones. That is just a prediction that they've already done of here's what we think. If students don't exceed that growth mark, here's how they'll perform next year. Obviously, we want them to be closer to the proficient range or above. And then keep in mind, this is not going to represent the data we actually get on Milestones, because we have a lot of students that are just not coming into the buildings to test. And we're not, we've offered the opportunity, but we're obviously not going to mandate anyone who does not feel comfortable coming in. We've offered at every school some the mitigation strategies that we can of making those children feel safe. And there are some parents that do want to bring their children in, and then some that don't. So our Milestones data this year is going to look very different than anything we've done in the past based on numbers of students. And then there's one more slide that shows those same predictions for math. Again, that's if all these students were to take the Milestones test. So then we obviously have been working as a district, as a teaching and learning department with our schools to then use this data and put in place some support plans for children and what that will look like. And so now Dr. Moten's going to share with you what we're doing as a district and as schools to help meet these needs.
That just also goes to show, though, how important it is to have those MAP scores instead of waiting on an end of course or end of year type of test. We can get closer to real time with those, with that type of testing, that diagnostic testing. It just really, really underscores it. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. So this is just a one-page document that is a summary of what we plan to do as a district. And how we arrived at this document is we talked with curriculum leaders in other school systems in our RESA. We talked with instructional coaches, we talked with principals, we talked with teachers, we talked with assistant principals to say, what should we do as a district? What do you need to help students be in a good place and to try to get them on grade level? One of the initial things that we decided upon was that we would not use the words learning loss because children did not necessarily lose any of the instructional time that they did not get. What was lost was time with students. And so we're looking at how can we help students and help accelerate and try to get ahead of where we were because we lost time. So we want to make up some of that time. And you can see in the top right there, what we plan to do as a district is we plan to identify and track students who are at risk of academic failure. That's something that we've done all along. So we want to know who those students are by academics, attendance, discipline, who are those students who are at risk of not moving forward in a timely manner. And then we want to identify priority standards. What are those major standards that students did where they did not get instruction in the spring? And then create individual learning plans for students. We already do that, but we want to be more intentional about that as well. And then use formative assessments to track student progress and monitor students more frequently and communicate with parents along the way. We asked elementary schools specifically what were some of the strategies that they wanted to use, and you can see there, there will be a focus on extended learning time, using EIP teachers to work very closely with students, whether that be going into the classroom or pulling students out for small group instruction, using the direct reading instruction boxes with students so that they get specific skill-based small group instruction. The next one is hire an interventionist to work in small groups with students. And we have talked about having someone, whether certified or paraprofessional, bringing someone on staff who can work in more smaller groups with those students. We do need extra hands for some of those students who may be a little bit farther behind than what was expected. And then provide summer learning opportunities. We are running summer schools at most of our campuses, and principals have sent letters of invitation to invite those students to participate in those programs. And then one of the high impact strategies that we know is effective is providing opportunities for students to participate in tutoring. So whether that be before school, after school, we do want to support that effort as well. And then there was discussion among principals about whether or not Saturday school opportunities would be appropriate. We have not decided upon doing that district-wide, but if there's a school where that is an effective strategy for students and students will respond well, then we certainly want to be able to offer that. Looking at middle school, you'll see some of the strategies are similar there as well. Still offering before and after school opportunities, Saturday school, summer school. In middle school, we have the reading and math app classes that students can attend during their connections time. Typically, the student-teacher ratio there is about 18:1, so that's a smaller group setting. So principals talked about using that time more intentionally and looking at the student rosters very carefully to decide which students would be able to take advantage of those courses. And again, middle school principals talked about tracking students more intentionally there as well. And then with high school, again, offering support classes, summer learning opportunities, the interventionist, and more targeted assistance for students as far as advisement. So those are some of the strategies that we talked about. As Jenny said, we're proud to see that we did not have students as far behind as was predicted. And we want to use these strategies that you see on the screen to to continue to provide the support that they need, with the focus on the fact that there was instructional time lost. Students didn't necessarily lose learning, but it was the instructional time that we want to try to capitalize upon. Any questions?
Yes, I have one. If we're looking at Saturday opportunities for children, are we going to provide buses to pick these kids up, or how are they going to get transported to and from if they don't have transportation?
That was part of our discussion, that we would definitely need to provide transportation if that is something that we decided to move forward on. Getting students on Saturday is questionable by grade level. So that's something we're looking a little closer at, but we did want to make sure that we were inclusive of all the ideas that came forward.
Like the plan, if you don't plan, you plan to fail, as those say go. How long of an evaluation period do you think it will be to see how effective this is? Sometimes we as educators are too quick to scrap the plan and go to something else. I've seen that a lot since I've been on the board. What kind of time frame are we looking at to see how effective this is?
Well, some of the data we'll be able to track mid-year, then some at the end of the year. Looking at hiring interventionists, that would be a 2-year proposal that we would look at having that additional staffing. So we're looking at anywhere from by semester to annually to 2 years and possibly 3 years. So it's not something that we want to look at as a quick fix. And we also want to give ourselves time to make sure that we're yielding the results as intended.
What was the ratio of the students at the high school level? You told us what it was at the middle.
I did at the middle school. That class size is about 18-1, and Mr. Maxwell said that he was going to try to keep his at about 20-1 at the high school.
Dr. Moten, just a quick question, just kind of sitting here as a parent representative and listening to this, it all sounds great. But I had one question that kind of came to mind when we talked about putting children in extra help classes during their connections. Is that something, and that seems like something that would be very disheartening to children, as that's the kind of the part of the day that they look forward to, especially in middle school. They don't get to go outside and play or run, so it's kind of the time that they get to have a little bit of enjoyment. I mean, is that something, I don't know, I just feel like that as a parent, if I were in that situation, I may be concerned about that. What would you say to a parent that had those concerns?
The apps classes are not new. That has been part of middle school programming for quite a while.
Okay.
And then students have connections classes that change. They have 2 connections classes.
Right.
So one of them could be like a creative something in their interest.
Okay.
And then one could be academically focused. And then as the academic schedule changes, they'll have time to rotate those classes. Some kids are in middle school band for year long. Some
Sure.
of them take an art class for a certain period of time, and then they do rotate out of those classes. So hopefully any student that goes into an app class would be able to get the targeted instruction that they need, show improvement and progress, and then be able to move out of that class. That's the intention, not that it's a holding cell for
Sure.
a long period of
And
time.
then, of course, the concession, I know maybe in middle school, they're it's sort of a lottery as to what class that you get. Would you guys be a little bit more apt to making sure that the class the child does get to get is something that the child enjoys versus just a lottery of you can't even draw stick people, they'll put you in art? Is that something that you guys try to really be targeted to the children and kind of what's going on with that? Or is it still just, you know what I mean? Like, would you make those concessions for the child if it was a situation where the parent was upset about that?
Absolutely. Remember at the top right, we said what we wanted to do was take a targeted list and identify who those students are.
Right.
So between the counselor, the administration, and teacher recommendations, we would be tracking those students and making sure that we look very closely at what they need.
Very personal plan. I like it. Thank
And
you.
the parents would be a part of that once they
Yes.
made their determinations.
Sure.
They would be part of that team also.
It's an impressive plan.
Yeah, thank you both. Great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okey-doke. Ms. Beggs? Okay. All right, move on to the consent agenda. We've got some old business that we had no feedback from the last meeting. Pardon me?
That's correct.
Correct. So if we all agree, we'll put these 3 items on the consent agenda for next week. First of all, the policy revision, the graduation requirements. Superintendent recommends removing policy IHF 6 from public review and approving said policy. All in favor of putting that on consent agenda? Okay. AP Physics textbook adoption, recommending the textbook College Physics for the AP, course number 40-08310 to be removed from the table and approved. We all good with that on the consent agenda? Okay.
Yes. Apparently, both physics and chemistry are not human physics and chemistry. They're regular chemistry and physics, so we're good to go.
Did you read them all?
Yes.
And then the final, the AP Chemistry textbook. Okay with the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay. New business. Mr. Ayers, you're back.
Twice in a night, y'all get a treat.
Hopefully you'll get the treat.
That's a trick to it, ain't it? Just looking at buying some buses, we've gotten some bond money. The state amended the bond amounts, so it gave us 5 extra buses. The total was 8. We've already spent the bonds for 3 of those. So this here is going to be the other 8. What it is, about March 15th, we got, the email from the state saying, hey, we've given you money for 5 more bond buses. That's $77,220 each. Obviously, that doesn't pay, complete cost of the bus and everything. What we ended up doing is just going with the low bid. We didn't really swashbuckle which vendor we were going with. We went with the ones that were lowest, on each one. We got 2 different type buses. We got 3 stock buses, 72 passenger without AC, $87,350 a piece, with a total price of $262.50. The next 2 were 2 48 passenger, which is our special needs buses. They're equipped with air conditioning and things. Now these buses do come with the equipment already in them, with the cameras and the radio. So you'll see a little more on the bid than what you were used to. We just went ahead and rolled that in. The reason I like doing that, in my experience with it, get a little more bargaining power. The vendor bargains with the radio people and all that and says, hey, we need to keep these bids low. So you let them haggle that out. I don't want to have to worry with it. So it kind of works out in our favor. So I've learned over the years, just let them do the horse trading on that in case they want to try to win that bid, because these were pretty close, but we still went with the lowest one. Total purchase price altogether is $462,770. Our funding sources, bus bonds will be totaling out $386,100, and we'll make up the difference out of SPLOST money, which will be $76,670 for a total of $462,770. So that's what we're putting out there to get those buses purchased.
Any questions, concerns?
All right.
Good. Consent agenda?
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. John Sinclair.
Yes, sir. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Copiers. So our current copier leasing contract with Rico has expired and needs to be replaced. An RFP was posted and 8 vendors responded with 10 proposals. For a contract like this, where service and functionality are important consideration factors as well as cost, we created a weighted scoring matrix to measure the responses of the 4 respondents with the 5 lowest cost proposals. And you can see that there. For instance, we had costs coming in at weighted at 25%, ease of use at 10%, copying functionality 10%, and so forth. And with all the factors measured, Standard Office Systems proposal of Sharp copiers came in slightly higher overall rating-wise than Toshiba's proposal, with Sharp being 4% higher. But we really wanted to focus on, user functionality. Do people want to use these? Can they use these? So we looked at it with cost removed as a consideration, looking only at the use and user experience metrics. Standard Office Systems response came in significantly higher by a little over 19% over, and I apologize, that's a typo. The second place swapped when we took out costs. So they came in 90% higher than Athens Digital. They came in 25% higher than Toshiba. So quite a bit of a jump once we put cost aside. But of course, still with cost considered, they came in higher overall by 4%. And I thought I would share the methodology we used. We used numerous resources to come up with the scores in the evaluation matrix. Each of the 4 respondents brought us some sample copiers from their proposals to the board office for us to evaluate for a week. We asked several key personnel to review the entire proposal packages from each of the respondents, and that was reviewing the product literature, the proposal details, as well as testing the copiers. But we also asked PDC staff members to just come use the copiers without any training or assistance to most closely replicate the normal end user experience where you walk up to a copier and you make it do its thing. No one's standing there telling you how to use it. And then we had them rate the user experience on a matrix on each copier as they tested them. We solicited feedback from the references provided by the respondents, but we also solicited feedback from the Georgia K-12 community in general that were not listed as references, asking them if they had any experience with the vendor or with the copier brand to provide their opinion and ratings as well. It's expected that if someone gives you a reference, it's going to be a good reference, but we wanted to hear from the non-reference districts as well if they had any relevant feedback, and they did actually quite a bit. And finally, the IT department looked specifically at the technical management, deploying them and managing them on the network, and the reporting capabilities, and the finance department looked at the financials of each of the 4 respondents to gauge stability of the company. So we had more eyeballs on this proposal than I think anything I've ever brought to the board before. The scoring results from individual scores were averaged to determine the final result matrix that we showed you above. So after consultation with members of the executive cabinet, we determined that the significant increase in the end user experience and functionality of the Sharp copiers from standard office systems justified the price difference between their response and Toshiba's. Our recommendation, therefore, is to accept the proposal from Standard Office Systems at $247,127.64 per year, for a term of 3 years, of course, with the district's option to terminate each year as we choose. Standard Office Systems met the terms of the RFP. They have very good feedback from the references and from their non-references. They have an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, and they are not adversely listed in the SAM.gov database. So the financial impact is as shown. The superintendent recommends awarding the contract to Standard Office Systems of Duluth, Georgia, in the amount of $247,127.64 per year. That was a mouthful. I'm sorry.
Everybody good with that? Okay, consent agenda? Very good. Thank you, John.
Thank you. I think the next one's mine. During summer renovations at Auburn Elementary, data cabling is required to support audio enhancements installation in the classrooms. An RFP was posted and 5 vendors responded. The low bid respondent, PowerLink Technologies of Winder, Georgia, met the terms of the RFP and is not adversely listed in the SAM.gov database. Their references are fine. PowerLink is a company we have not previously used for data cabling before. They've been in business for 4 years. We're also asking the board to approve our standard move add change allowance, this time an additional $1,500 for any changes that come up during the construction process. So the financial impact will be $12,995 with a move add change allowance of $1,500 for a total of $14,495 from Splosh construction funds. The superintendent recommends awarding the bid for low voltage data cabling for Auburn Elementary to PowerLink in the amount of $14,495.
Questions? Consent agenda? Thank you, sir. You're up again.
I am up again. One more. I'm going for the trifecta. So during the summer renovation of Holzenbeck Elementary, low voltage data cabling will need to be upgraded in the building to meet current standards deployed at other schools in the district. I just want to explain a little what that means. This is a complete job. We are ripping out all the existing data cabling, putting in brand new data cabling like it was a brand new building being cabled. So this is a significantly bigger job. An RFP was posted and 4 vendors responded. Low bid respondent PowerLink Technologies of Weiner has been in business for 4 years, and we've not previously done business with them. Due to the short time frame for this job completion, it has to be done concurrently with the Auburn job, and the greater level of complexity and stakes in this cabling job, we are recommending awarding the bid for Holzenbeck data cabling to the second low bid respondent, Tech Optics of Winder, Georgia. PowerLink Technologies, of course, has been recommended for the Auburn Elementary cabling installation, and their performance will be assessed post-installation for future reference when those come up. Tech Optics met the terms of the RFP, has performed numerous similar installations for the district satisfactorily, and is not adversely listed in the SAM.gov database. So the financial impact will be $74,384.82 with their move add change allowance of $7,500, bigger job, for a total authorization of $884.82 from Splosh Technology Construction Funds. So that is the superintendent's recommendation awarding the bid for Holstenbeck Cabling to Tech Optics of Winder, Georgia, in the total amount of $81,884.82.
Makes sense to me. Any other questions, comments?
John, does PowerLink Technologies just don't think they can do both jobs? I mean, why would they bid on them if they didn't think they could do them?
I'm sure they do believe they could do them, sir. I'll harken back to the previous bid we had for security data cabling, where security camera data cabling, where we had the time to let them try the first job and see if we were satisfied with it. We told you then that if we would have them do one school, and if it was satisfactory, we'd continue. If it wasn't, we'd come back to you. We don't have the time to do that in this one. We have 2 months to get both jobs done. PowerLink's time in business and their fairly low bid left me a little bit of caution that I wanted to see a job from them first before we gave them a complete job like Holstenbeck.
Okay, if they do a good job on the Auburn, would you, if this comes up again, would you still be hesitant to recommend them for 2 jobs at one time?
No, sir. If they do a great job at Auburn, we've got another, local contender I'm happy to have.
I guess I'm questioning because there's such a big difference in price.
Yes, sir.
We talked about it is, but it's, it's with a proven job for years. And that's, if we get down the road like we did with the last one, had to make a change, we wouldn't be able to get Holstenbeck back online in time for school to start back. So
I don't have time. I don't have time for something to go wrong on this one.
We have these other numbers.
Well, I realize there's a big difference in the pricing, but I tend to think that John's on point here, because several times in the past, we have tried companies because they were the low bidder, and then we run into issues, and this is time sensitive. So, if PowerLink does a good job, then we'll have 2 vendors in Winder, and they can knock each other out and be bids going forward.
I would just almost, of course, you know a lot more about this stuff than I do. The Auburn job is such less dollars and cents. And if you wanted to try them out,
Yes, sir. It's also, it's an easier job to recover from if something goes wrong. It's something that would be easy for us to go back and retroactively fix. The Holstenbeck job would be much more complicated and curriculum impacting if we have an issue and have to go back and fix it after school starts.
You've checked references on PowerLink, right, John? They've
Yes,
done jobs and you feel fairly comfortable in them, I understand, right?
Yes, sir. Again, a young company, not a lot of references. The ones they submitted to us were fine, but yes, sir.
Okay.
I'd like to hold this off for consent agenda.
Want to hold it off? Okay. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Colonel, you're back. Ricky, what do you, is there something you want them to come back with, Ricky? Or do you want some?
I just think we need to discuss it.
That's what I mean. Is there something that you want us to provide?
A lot of people don't turn into the work session. And we sort of need to show our work, show why we're doing what we're doing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the next 4 items all deal with recovering the final 10% of state capital outlay dollars for projects that were completed last summer. And we typically ask the board to, per state DOE requirement, to execute a certificate of the Board of Education. And that verifies that you all are okay with the project closeout and receiving those dollars back. So once we pay the architect, we pay the contractor, we receive all the closeout documents, that's when we come to you and ask for that certificate to be executed. So that's where we are right now for Statham Elementary. And West Side Middle School renovation and HVAC work, BASA, and the Appalachian High School HVAC work. And some of these were multi-phase, but all of them were wrapped up last summer. And so I'll read the recommendation for each one, and then if there are any questions, we have to answer those. But the superintendent recommends final closeout of the Statham Elementary School renovation project. Superintendent recommends final closeout of the West Side Middle School renovation and modification project. Superintendent recommends final closeout of the Barrow Arts and Sciences project. The superintendent recommends final closeout of the Appalachian High School HVAC modification project. Are there any questions?
So from these 4 closeouts, we're getting back 983 million. 983.
When you total up these 4, it comes up just shy of $2 million. It comes back to us. And that's just the final 10%. So we've been receiving reimbursement from the state on each of these projects along the way. Now we're just trying to grab that last 10% from them.
Joe, was this money already spoken for?
Yeah.
Oh, your voice is changing.
Hey, Joe.
Joe, your voice changed.
Jennifer and I have, a healthy debate about things like that. And so.
Tell him it's been claimed twice.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay. Okay.
Consent agenda?
Yes.
4 items? Okay. Ms.
Okay.
Houston? Got one more.
Got one
Oh, one more for Joe.
I'm sorry.
So I started to lead too. When you have the words change and order and they're separate and, by themselves, they're perfectly fine. When you put them together, they become a 4-letter word in our business, unless the word deductive is before that, and then it's fine. But in this case, in all seriousness, we are asking the board to approve a change order in the amount of $1 million for renovation work that was approved last summer. This was, if you recall, the work that we did in the middle schools and high schools to improve the main entry vestibules, make them more secure, put classroom cameras in place. We also renovated Statham Elementary School and did flooring and lighting work at Winnebago High School as part of that larger project. So we already have the construction manager in place, Charles Black Construction. Now what we have now is funds from the federal government coming down through the state through we call ARP, the American Rescue Plan, and we'd like to use those funds to remove as much carpet as we can from classroom areas, and so we grabbed a little bit more here. That would be Winnebago High School, Bear Creek Middle School, and Heyman Morris Middle School. We'll also be working, of course, in Appalachia, Folsom-Beck, and Auburn this summer as well. So there's still more for us to get out there, and we'll be doing more of that next summer. But we just felt like with these funds available to us that we could grab a little bit more and not get out over our skis. And so that's what we're asking for tonight, is to approve a change order in the amount of $1 million to our 2020 summer renovation project using American Rescue Plan dollars.
Questions?
So how many schools, after we do this, Joe, how many schools that leave we want to rip the carpet out of?
We'll have Bramlett, Kennedy, and Yargo. And we really at Bramlett, it's throughout. At Yargo, it's in the 2-story addition. And at Kennedy, it's throughout. So, and then also Bethlehem and County Line. And we'll make a push to do all those next summer.
So 5 will be left after we do this summer.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We'll also be in CFIT this summer. I didn't mention that, but so anyway, we feel this is a good application of these dollars, and we also feel like we can get this work done this summer. We try to do more than that. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Okay, consent agenda? Okay. No, thank you.
All right, we are at Appalachia High School shelving for the media center. So the superintendent recommends accepting the bid from Georgia Institutional Furnishings to refresh shelving at Appalachia High School Media Center during the renovations over the summer. The total cost will be approximately $41,461. We are also asking for a contingency of $4,140 for adjustments in the quantity and permission to go to the next lowest bid if product standards or timeliness of delivery becomes an issue. This summer, as you know, facilities will be renovating the Appalachia High School, and attached is the bid tabulation. 5 vendors responded to the request for bid. The selection was made on best price, most durable product, and uniformity of products, timeliness of delivery. Total cost will be used out of ELOS funds, $41,461, with a contingency of $4,140. They have existing shelving in there that they're going to keep along the walls, but they have this very high shelving that's in the middle. And so they're going to try to get rid of that and go to shorter, more mobile shelving for the middle of their media center.
Questions? Consent agenda? Okay.
The next item is Westside Middle School classroom furniture. The superintendent recommends accepting the highlighted price per line item on the attached bid tabulation sheets for classroom furniture in the new wing of the Westside Middle School. Total cost will be approximately $112,661. And we are also asking again for a contingency of $11,500 for adjustments in the quantity and permission to go to the next lowest bid if product standards or timeliness of the delivery becomes an issue. This summer, facilities will be complete in the new wing of the Westside Middle School. Attached is the bid tabulation for student and teacher classroom furniture. 6 vendors responded to the request for bid. Selection was made on each line item using best price, most durable product, uniformity of products, and timeliness of delivery. Total cost will be $112,661 and a contingency of an additional $11,500 paid out of SLOSS funds.
Questions? Consent agenda? Okay.
Okay, now we are at the budget. And I think what I want to do here, Suzanne, is open up the PDF, the big one, and we'll just quickly go through this since we went through it on Wednesday night. Let's open the other one up because there was just 2 changes that I wanted to make you aware of. All right. Okay. So just scroll until I tell you to stop, Suzanne. So as you know, we use the strategic plan to make all of our decisions on. Highlights of we start at 0. This is where we are. Keep on going. Yep. Revenues, we have state and federal funds. Okay, stop there. Our overall budgeted revenues this year will be $142,860,070. And of course, the biggest increase is our state funding is coming in at $8.7 million. And we talked about the reason why that's so that it's increased is because the state cuts are only at 4% this year instead of 10% like they were the previous year. And of course, the equalization that we got, equalization grant property taxes out of the state funds. We're also predicting a $952,000 increase in our local taxes. We'll move on to expenditures. We have our state required benefits. We talked about those, just keep on going. And our investment in faculty and staff, we're gonna, yeah, that's okay, keep on going. Special revenue, and let's stop at investment and instruction right there. All right, so we added 5.5 net teaching positions, added 2 ag teachers, 1 at the Westside Middle School, so now we have 4 at each middle school, or 1 at each of our 4 middle schools, and then we added 1 at Appalachia High School, so we'll now have 2 at each high school. We are adding one instructional coach split between AIM and BASA. That was not on the original document. Added one paraprofessional, the reading materials of $63,000, textbooks for growth and replacement, math workbooks, and high school science and math supplies. Let's scroll a little bit further till you get to investment. Right there, student health and safety. We had 0.5 counselors here. There's actually 1.5 counselors that we are hiring for next year. And then of course, a social worker, health services manager, district athletic trainers, and continue be the voice anti-bullying platform. If y'all have any questions, just stop me, but we're just gonna keep on going until we get to the overall budgeted expenditures right there. So those are now $146,751,192 for a deficit of $3,891,122. 87% of this budget is salaries and benefits. And how the money was spent is on the next slide. We spend 76.49% in the classroom. And then the next slide is just a visual of how we spend the money. The next slide is just a visual of how we do our expenditures. Our salaries and benefits, like I said, is 87 million. That's 127 million of our budget is just benefits and salaries. Then we talked about our federal funds that came into play. Our CARES Act 1 helped us out in last year's budget. CARES Act 2 and CARES Act 3, we received we're going to receive $8.8 million to be spent by 9/30. These, of course, are reimbursable grants, so we have to spend the money before we can collect the money. And then CARES Act 3, the American Rescue Plan, $19.9 million to be spent by 9/30/2023. So that's a 2-year grant. So we're asking for our federal funds, these CARES Act, to help us out. And we're going to move over 1.9 million of our custodial costs over to our CARES Act funds. We're going to also move over technology, the iPads, transit van, the hotspots, the Google licensing. We're also moving personnel over to these federal funds. So the social worker, the environmental coordinator, the instructional technology integration specialists, the 2 that we are going to ask to hire, our 3 graduation specialists, and our 16 academic interventionists and their training. So we are going to present to you a balanced budget, not using fund balance this year, of $142,860,070. And so the next slide just shows our fund balance not being used. So we have a healthy fund balance of $36.7 million, and we talked about how we needed to keep it healthy. And then our suggested items that we're talking about, maybe looking into federal funds, CARES Act funds for a learning management system, virtual academy 7 through 12, and alternative school pre-K, not be in the same school, but kind of, okay. Social emotional learning plan, a grant administrator, minority recruitment, and additional technology devices. And the above will be considered by CARES Act funds, and so we'll bring these to you individually as we research them more and find out the cost. And then next work session, I'll bring to you the other funds tentative budget for you to vote on. So our next steps is next week, you will vote on this tentative budget, so I can then advertise it and hold 2 public hearings on this budget. And then hopefully, if all goes well, June 22nd, we will have a balanced budget approved. So Suzanne, if you bring up the other PDF, it's just a 1-pager, and this is what you'll be voting on.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions? Great job.
Good job.
We'll, consent agenda, everybody
Great
good
job.
with it? Okay.
Thank you.
So if I'm reading this correctly, we aren't adding to our rainy day fund. We're just leaving it like it is this year.
Yes.
Because it's 2.5 times what it would take, basically. Okay.
All righty. President Michael.
Yes. Okay. The state legislature passed a law, not this session, but last session, Senate Bill 68, and it said that all school systems, school boards have to have a public participation in board meetings, and outlined a few things that had to be in there. We've had it for years already, so we just had to make a couple of changes. GSBA sent out recommended policy, so basically what we did here is just took that. As you can see here, this piece that struck through is our policy that was last revised back in 2011. Basically, what did here is just take that, strike it all, go with the GSBA suggested policy, which you can see there in the red, which says, that the meetings, and you have to have the set parameters. The only real parameter that changed for us that the legislature put in was in the past we had for a public to be placed on the public speaking piece. They had to turn in in writing a piece, something that says we will requesting to be on the agenda by Thursday before the Tuesday meeting. State legislature pushed that to 24 hours before. I think it's probably fair. That's really the major difference in it. So basically with that, the new policy says that we'll have a regulation or procedure. So I took our old policy and just basically made a procedure out of that. Being a procedure or regulation, those can be changed a lot easier than a policy. Through the whole approval process, we just have to come to you and see what you want to do there. So, so that would be the new policy in red. And then if you can pull up the actual procedure going forward, be that piece. And as you can see, that's basically what we already had. We've already been doing it. I had no idea that other districts, I've never seen another district that did not have the public participation already set up on the agenda, but apparently there were some. So this is just to get us in, and we have to have this done by July 1st of this year. So really get it done. So, any concerns or questions, anything about really the procedure? I think the actual policy is pretty straightforward and good to go.
I have a problem. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I have a problem with board vested chairperson or other presiding officer authority to determine whether it's in the interest of the board to allow an individual or group to make an oral presentation before the board. That is actually a board decision. So.
Yeah, that again, that I actually have looked into that, and that was in our policy since 2011. I did go back and pull the policy before that, or actually Suzanne did for me, 2003, and it did not have that. So, so that for some reason was changed back in 2011, but again, being a procedure, well, I think it was still in the policy. Y'all can definitely make a change. We're not, of course, not voting on it tonight. So if there's any discussion, anything you want us to change, now's the time to discuss it.
What was your specific question about that? Concern?
The fact that the board vests in its chairperson, whoever that might be, authority to decide who can speak before the board, that could potentially be an issue. Not saying that it would be, but basically the board is giving its authority to one person on the board to make a decision. There have been, in my 25 years of experience on this board, some chairs who didn't really let the rest of the board know who wanted to speak from time to time and make decisions that might not have been in the board's best interest. And again, I'm not saying that would happen, I'm saying it can. And the other thing that concerns me about this is it says if there are numerous requests to address the board, the chairperson may select representatives to speak on each side of the issue or otherwise limit the number of individuals speaking for or against a specific issue. That is a very it could create situations where people aren't feeling that they're heard. And I can think of several examples where we have had folks show up where you had 20 people show up to speak, and they needed to get their 3 minutes in. And what normally happens sometimes is that people will speak and say the same thing because they're talking about the same issue. So I don't have a problem with saying, if they submit to us in writing what they want to speak on, we can say, you've got 8 people who want to speak on the same thing. Y'all want to get together and have a spokesperson, and maybe have 2 spokespersons instead of 8. But it needs to be up to the people. We represent them, is my concern.
Well, when I saw this afternoon, because I've read everything, I called them and I said, well, have you read this? And I had a huge issue because I didn't know it was changed. I was on the board in 2003 when we changed the original policy, because we had problems with the original. It wasn't on, we had people showing up and it was a free for all. And we went in, the board at the time went into great detail, worked with Chester Gibson, who was on GSBA and GSBA, to come up with a concrete policy that we wouldn't have all the problems that we did with the original policy. And it worked. So why it got changed in 2011, one can only guess. I am familiar who the chair was at the time. I don't know. But at the same time, this is censorship. This can be censorship. And it's going to leave a lot of issues if somebody gets censored because they can't come to the full board. We represent our constituents in the district. And if our constituents can't fill out the form and follow what, and nobody has been censored since I've been back on the board, to my knowledge. But if that happens, you're going to have a major issue. And if you think COVID was an issue and people got hurt feelings over that, there's going to be a lot more hurt feelings out there if somebody gets censored because one person decides that the full board cannot hear what somebody has to say. That's my concern over it.
Yeah, and I think your concerns are well taken. I think what we need to do is just present them, and then we're going to table this and we'll make the appropriate changes. I don't have any problem with any of it.
Yeah, I think you guys make good points. I mean, I think we have to have some type of situation to retain order. I mean, that's important.
Right.
It can't be a free for all. But we also have to remember that, to Lynn's point, I mean, I would never think that Bill would do such a thing.
No, I
But
don't
we're
think
not
he would
always going to
either.
be here, and it's not up to
I
us
don't
to make
think-
policy
no,
for today.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that at all.
Of course, I understand. Yeah, I don't really don't disagree. I mean, I don't think this is all wrong, but I do agree with her that it could create a problem just the way it's written. And, but I also agree that we have to come up with some type of organizational concept to retain order.
Oh, yes.
So that's
that's
a tall drink of water sometimes. I think.
Right.
Lisa, you're ready to say, go ahead.
Well, I'm the way I'm reading it, it says whether it is the interest of the board. It sounds to me like whoever the chair is, anybody coming before, wanting to speak before the board, if it's of board interest, they would obviously always be allowed to speak. It sounds to me like the board chair is determining whether it is the interest of the board, maybe coming before us to speak about something that is not our job to be making a decision about or even discussing.
That's why
I kind of read it that way too.
Yeah, I think the superintendent.
When I
That's
saw
how I
last
read
week,
it
that's
until
what I
she started talking. And then I was
I
like,
think the
okay.
superintendent kind of looks and then they say something, but I just don't think that put
Well,
the chair in a position like that.
Maybe it's just for clarification.
Yeah,
purposes.
Maybe we just address the verbiage.
Yeah.
This is just a guideline. It's not a policy, so we can go in and do
Yeah,
that.
that part can be changed. That's really proposed on the policy. if you want. But,
Sure.
But why don't, in the meantime, why don't I go in and do some digging and see if I can't clarify that and get it to y'all with better verbiage or we can, again, we can vote, we can actually vote on you all can vote on the policy and then the regulation can be tweaked.
Amended.
But I think I would rather have it all at once and have it go together.
I just think it needs a little tweaking.
Yeah, I think it needs a little
I just think it needs a little tweaking because, and the
agree.
policy that we had when we came up with that worked well because everything went through you first and then it would come to us and That seemed to work.
And that seemed to work, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll do that and next week we'll get that out to you. We can definitely hash that piece out. You know, I read one thing and Kelly called and I said, yeah, I can definitely see how that looks like one person might have.
Yeah.
One, and you shouldn't put whoever's in that seat in that position, because people would be mad if they block.
So let me ask the board this, so the piece with the board visits, chairperson of the presiding officer authority, we'll tweak that piece. The piece limiting the number if there's a lot, and I think a lot of that probably comes from some of the larger districts where they'll have 100 people.
That's a long time.
It is, but on the other hand.
Ricky will not take it.
They should be heard too.
Tush can stand it up.
Just want to be clear, if you want me to tweak both of those or.
Yeah, the 3-minute piece is important because people
It is, because they'll go on.
can do for 3 minutes. And then, so that part's fine. That's worked out well for us. But I really think, unless it just gets to be a situation where you got 100 people wanting to speak and they're all saying the same thing,
Then I think you can do
at
that.
that point, you can say,
You can do that with-
Kind of like our email.
We're gonna be here all night.
You're gonna have to stay the whole meeting.
Yeah. I don't think we'll leave.
You got your doors
All
closed.
100 of you want to speak, you all stay.
You're here until we.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and just see if I can't get a better verbiage on that piece of it and get that out. to y'all for approval.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you.
But you're okay with the actual
Concept.
policy?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the concept itself is good. I think it just
Yeah, I
is a
think
little
concept
muddy.
itself-
Yeah, okay, we can do that. Actually, is why it's better to have a shorter policy than a longer one.
Yes.
Good to go.
Okay. And then the next one is policy KCA, public participation. It's really redundant. I'm not sure why we have it in both places, basically. It pretty much says the exact same thing with a shorter form. So I would either ask for y'all to, rather it would be just to rescind it, and since we already have it. The other alternative to that, if you all want to keep it in that section, is to just mirror it exactly with the other policy.
So why would we need both?
I
Well,
don't
this
know. I
one
didn't
still
know-
says
I didn't know we
Thursday.
had it. Suzanne pointed out.
This one still has the Thursday verbiage.
Yeah, it's a little bit different and, but it says the same thing, it's just written. different. I don't-
So they
Looks
don't
to
have
me
to
like
have
it's
24
redundant.
hours, or they do?
This one I haven't rewritten yet because I was really
I see.
asking to rescind it.
I
If
see.
you all don't
Oh,
want to
okay.
rescind it, and want to keep it in that area,
I don't see
then I
that.
can rewrite it with the other policy.
No,
You were saying that.
yeah,
now,
redundant.
I mean, the other one reads 24 hours. This one still
Yeah,
reads.
that would be
Thursday
changed.
before.
If we keep this, we would change.
You
The other
change
would
it.
supersede this, and this would
Yeah.
be stricken. So
Well, I think we just get rid of
I
this
think the
one.
best thing to do is rescind it.
Get rid of this one,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. I
Are we
agree.
okay with putting that on consent agenda?
To get rid of this one, yeah.
Rescind that one then. All right, great.
Okay. Anything else? All right, authorizations for committees. We've already talked about our teacher of the year. That being said, we're going to go into our called executive session to discuss or deliberate upon the appointment, employment, compensation, hiring, disciplinary action or dismissal, or periodic evaluation or rating of a public officer or employee, or to interview applicants for the position of superintendent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.